for hosting us again. And hi, everyone. It's great to see all of you. My name is Mark Keem. I have the honor of representing John and Marianne and so many other people in the room right now. I look around and I see some good friends and constituents. I also see some new faces, which is great. Every year, I've done this now for about 9 years, and I've come to these meetings. And it's great that we have a larger room, because I remember when we had these rooms where it was starting to get a little bit crowded, but it's a good sign that more people are coming. I want to also thank Dr. Clara Bilden for hosting us over here at Virginia National University, and also many of you here who've come down to Richmond during the session. It's not easy to take time off your day job, your family, all your other obligations to come down to Richmond, but I'll tell you, as members on this side will tell you, that it makes a difference when you show up. It really makes a difference when you come and testify on bills that we care about. Because whether you're tweeting or social media or texting or phone calls or Facebook, all that's great, but there's nothing that's better than face-to-face conversations. And when you're sitting in front of a room full of legislators and explaining why something is going to help you or harm you in a personal way, that message resonates a lot better. Now, you may or may not be able to sway votes depending on partisanship and politics, but the fact that you show up makes a difference in terms of how members react to you. So I encourage you to keep doing that. That's what SALT is really good at. So I see all of you come down once in a while. Let me do this, and I didn't realize that we're going to be doing like an interview process here, so I don't have specifics to that. But I also look around here, and I've got at least 6 or 7 members on this side, and I think more members will be coming in and out to make sure that they all have a chance to speak as well. Let's save some of the conversations, especially on something like immigration, which Alfonso Lopez and so many other people have been real champions on, and so they can probably tell you a little bit about that as well. But let me just start with a little preview. And the reason why I'm leaving a little bit early today, and I was a little bit late, is today is a day that I never thought would happen. My wife and I are very proud, because our son, our firstborn, is doing his Eagle Scouts project right now.
Yeah.
He's planting trees at the Gant Community Center. And so he was up bright and early this morning with all of his tools, and he has about 20-odd kids running around, and my wife is trying to handle 20 teenage boys and their dads. So she's running back and forth with coffee and all. So I need to get over there to help out for a little bit. And I also have to speak at a lunch meeting, which the League of Women Voters today, they're having their annual meeting, and there's a special program that I'm part of it. So I need to run back and forth. So I'm sorry I can't stay for the rest of the day. But for me, this session is my 9th in the General Assembly, and probably the most productive, the most successful I've had. I passed 11 bills out of the House. 9 of them have become law. I also was a chief co-patron of 5 other bills that became law this year. And I was on 4 committees and a bunch of subcommittees, so I was able to get involved in a lot of legislation that moved through this year. Had a hand in a number of significant major bills that you probably heard about, especially on energy and environmental issues, but across the board. But the reason why I was able to have such a good session this year has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with my skills or my abilities, because frankly that hasn't changed very much in the last few years. It has everything to do with the fact that some of my very good friends here to my left here, David and Kathy, and you saw Carrie Delaney and so many other members that have joined us, the 15 or so new Democratic colleagues, as well as the 3 Republican colleagues who joined us. That changed the dynamic in Richmond in ways that in my 9 years so far I haven't seen before. There's a lot more comedy. There's a lot more bipartisanship. There's a lot more idea of respecting and trusting each other. And as a result of that, they've also simmered down some of the controversial issues. C-O-M-I-T-Y. Okay, just want to know. For some of you know, I quit my comedy routines before this year, so I'm not doing comedy anymore. This year, we've also had a chance to focus on issues, whether they passed or not. The fact is that we had a lot more conversations about substantive issues than before. And the reason is, if you're a member of a caucus with 66, 67 members, and the other caucus is 32, 33, they really didn't have an incentive to talk to you, because they didn't need your votes to pass anything. So as a result, Republicans met themselves, they got their bills passed, they had their committee meetings, and we just kind of sat around and said, can we have a chance to speak it? But this time around, when you only have 51 out of 100, and we have 49, every member counts. Every vote counts. Every bill depends on having everybody supporting it, or if 1 or 2 people decide that they want to not support you, all of a sudden that bill becomes at risk. And so because of that, there was a lot more bipartisanship. And one issue I want to just mention a little bit is that there's a bill that, on the surface, many of us in Northern Virginia should not have supported. It was a tax credit for jobs coming to Southwest, South Side, and other poverty-stricken parts of Virginia. And even though it's a great idea and a concept we would all support, it had absolutely zero benefits to Northern Virginia. There was not a single jurisdiction up here in the Planning District 8 that would benefit from this bill. But an overwhelming majority of Democrats in both House and Senate supported it, and we co-sponsored it, and we worked with the Republicans all the way until it's on the governor's desk and he signed it into law. And the reason was because we thought, if this is so compelling and important for our friends in the Southwest South Side that just don't have economic opportunities. I'm lucky because I represent Tyson's. I have 4, 5, 6 Fortune 500 companies. I've had the honor of having Governor Northam come up twice now, maybe 3 times, and announce jobs in my district in the last couple weeks. And we're doing press releases all the time about new jobs coming and Amazon, possibly, and what have you. So we're very lucky and fortunate that we have economic opportunities. But the rest of the Commonwealth is not as fortunate. And so if we were to just ignore them and say, well, that's your problem, you should deal with it on your own, we'll deal with ours, we don't have the kind of reciprocity that we need on bills like the Metro funding, which many of our colleagues, I'm not sure if Rick Sullivan's going to be here, but there are many other colleagues who worked on that very deeply, so I'll let them talk about the Metro funding and how it ended up at the end. But there are ways that we can try to help each other out. And Medicaid expansion you just heard about through Mark and Dick Saslaw. So we thought, here's an opportunity, given the 51-49 dynamic in the House and the 19-21 dynamic in the Senate, why don't we as Democrats from Northern Virginia show that we really truly care, sincerely care, about the needs of our Virginians in Southwest, Southside, and some of the other places that are not as economically fortunate as we are. And by doing so, we had a lot of conversations behind closed doors, a lot of conversations on the sidebars, which led to many of the Republicans feeling so much more comfortable coming out and supporting Medicaid. And there's no accident that the first group of Republicans in the House that came out and supported Medicaid publicly were Terry Kilgore, Todd Pillion, Will Moorfield, and a number of other Republicans in the Southwest South Side who will benefit the most from the tax credit bill that we all supported and we signed off on out of the Finance Committee that I served on. So I had some role in that bill, and I was really proud of that. So hopefully this is a good trend towards the future. Regardless of what happens next year with the elections, and obviously some of us would like to see some changes happen, but regardless, if we keep that narrow margin between the two parties, I hope this is a beginning of a new bipartisan approach in Virginia. And at the end of the day, that's what we all should expect from our legislators, is to work across the aisle, work across regions on issues that are not just narrow to your own interests, but across the board for everybody. So having said all that, let me just address, I think John mentioned immigration, technology, Facebook. What was the last thing that you wanted?
That's it.
Oh, okay, that's it. So with that, I want to thank you all. I really appreciate you inviting me back and forth, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of my colleagues. I'm going to be leaving soon, but I know that they have some incredible things to tell you about. So I want to thank you once again, John, Marianne, everybody, and good luck, and Bob as well.
I want you to